All righty. We should be live. We are live. And want to appreciate everyone. We are on the Justice for Oakland Students page. And this is obviously not where we plan to be. But for those in the public that don't know, we had a little bit of a tech glitch, which is in a year of sheltering in place, we all know all about tech glitches. And so just want to appreciate those who will probably not see this live, but we'll get to hear a beautiful conversation because we're going to continue to move this work forward in the spirit of why we are here tonight. So, hi everyone. We are here. We made it. Yay! Whoop! Persistence, persistence. So, welcome to everyone. Welcome to the Black Lives Matters in Schools conversation panel as a part of the day one of the Reparations for Black Students campaign. My name is Pecolia Manigo. I'm the moderator for today's panel. I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves in just a second, but I wanted to kind of ground us all in why we are here tonight talking about Black Lives Matters in schools. And first and foremost, just want to appreciate that, I always lead with being a mother. And as a mother, one of the things that I ground my own children in, and that I fundamentally believe is central to my organizing is the right that every Black child has to feel safe, achieve academically, and thrive in Oakland. And one of the things that is central to this work is that Black students deserve an education without over-criminalization, without bias, without lack of empathy, without under-resourcing in their schools, and without failure to meet minimum state and civil rights standards. There's not a family I've met in Oakland, particularly Black family in this district that hasn't faced some form of anti-Black racism and discrimination. And yet there really has never been a comprehensive plan or a set of resources or a set of integrated strategies at the scale needed to address the problem that exists in our schools and in our city. And so one of the things that has come up as a question, a foundational question of this campaign is if Black lives really matter, and we all have these signs up in our windows, but if Black lives really matters, then it is really time for OUSD to pass the Reparations for Black Students resolution to repair the harm that is being done to Black students and parents. So tonight's panel is really about how we discuss how we're going to really work as a community, as a nation, to improve student outcomes. First here in Oakland, obviously where this campaign is grounded, but also thinking about what this moment means about really calling for systemic change and not just programmatic change, and about how we organize to ensure that we're continuing that work that really started with all of the movements for abolitionists throughout our history, up until even recent, Brown versus Board of Education, and the work that has happened over the last several decades to really lift up the needs of Black children. And so tonight our panel, which I'm super excited about. We got a couple of folks that are just, amazing educators, amazing activists, amazing organizers, amazing parents, amazing family members who really want to bring about and create change in the dialogue. And we wanted to ground this panel and really share with the community what we mean when we're saying reparations. So let's go ahead and get started and have everyone introduce themselves. Whitney, why don't you get starting this off?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Whitney. I am an educator at Met West High School. I'm a teacher there. I've been in the district for 14 years. I'm also a proud OEA member. Yes. And I'm also a mother of 3, 2 of which attend OUSD schools.
Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead, Erica.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Erika Chavarria. I am a high school Spanish teacher in Howard County, Maryland, about 15 minutes south of Baltimore City. I am currently involved in several organizations doing the work on the ground here in Maryland to push for police-free schools, anti-racist pedagogy, decolonizing education. And I'm really honored and happy to be here tonight. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. And go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Mike Hutchinson, proud graduate of Oakland Public Schools, co-founded Open Oakland Public Education Network and a founding member of the Journey for Justice National Alliance, and now a newly elected school board member here in Oakland in District 5. And again, shout out to brother Jesse up in Seattle. I was a last minute replacement because he couldn't be here. And hopefully we'll have a couple more panelists joining us as we get started here also.
Yes, yes. And so thank you so much for mentioning Brother Jesse is not able to join us tonight. And so we're all going to send him some amazing energy, healing energy for him, and continue to move forward as we know he would ask us to do. And so I wanted to kind of kick us off in the most classic fashion that I can, with really listening to one of our elders. We had the privilege and the honor to be able to ground in with our elder, Erica Huggins. For those that don't know, Erica Huggins is a former political prisoner, a Panther, a Black Panther. That's right. She was also one of the many amazing people who made possible the Oakland Community School, which is one of the cornerstones of the Panthers' legacy here in Oakland. As a director, she really helped to make this groundbreaking community-run child care education center in Oakland that fed children, that made Black joy and many other things possible. And so she is going to grace us via video and really allow us to kind of just ground into the legacy of the work and the success that they had. We thought it would be really helpful to ground first in her words and giving honor to our elders, because all of our work is built on their backs and their strife and their trailblazing in this conversation. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and we'll get that video started.
Because it had been said, it had been written, that that is what every freed slave deserves. And I was thinking, there are those of us who still believe that reparations comes in the form of concrete money or that which translates to money, like 40 acres. And in talking with you, I got the impression that, and it was a great impression, that we're talking about restoring justice. We're talking about repairing harm and using existing monies to begin repairing that harm by, for instance, establishing or reinvigorating reading programs, nurturing the whole child, having educators that understand not just the curriculum, but how to teach. Because what we need, and this was our principle at Oakland Community School started by the Black Panther Party in 1973-74 school year. Our principle was, we want children to learn how, not what to think. And in our mainstream academic institutions, and elementary and secondary schools fit into that paradigm, teachers are taught to teach the information and test for that information. I'll never forget my visits to the Youth Advisory Board. This was our alternate to punitive practices at Oakland Community School. We didn't have detention of any kind. As a matter of fact, later in the school's existence, it closed in 1982. We added yoga as one, in the mid-70s, we added yoga as one form of bringing any human being back to center, with simple poses that the children could get permission to leave the classroom and go out into the sort of central area open to the sky and do, for instance, a standing pose like the tree pose that cannot happen unless you have focus and balance, and then they could return. We also recognized that not everybody has the same learning style, but we didn't separate the children from each other because of that, as if something was wrong. We just figured out how to work with them as they are. Children came to us from Oakland Unified School District who, for many, many different reasons, and I said before, it's not the teachers that are at fault for this. This old system has anti-Blackness embedded in its scaffolding. You learn to read by telling me the captions for the cartoon or the storyline, and we create a page, a story page, or a cartoon, a set of cartoon squares, and you tell me what they are, you speak them, I write them, and then you read them back. And then with your teachers at the school, at Oakland Community School, you can begin to learn by writing something. In other words, as Paulo Freire says, literacy education, people have a purpose and a reason for wanting to read, for wanting to write, for wanting to learn, because it benefits them directly in their lives. This young man learned to read. He was brilliant anyway. All children are brilliant. Every single one of them. We didn't want to send children to any place that made anybody write 500 to 1,000 times, like many of us had to do when we were younger. We didn't want to walk into a room and see only our little brown cells with someone at the front who not only non-verbally devalued our existence, but sometimes would say things to that captive audience that was in detention. So we created something called the Youth Advisory Board. And the Youth Advisory Board was a peer and advocate board for children. And the members of the board rotated, and there was one adult advisor who sat quietly in the room, just if the children needed. She said, I remember another time where I had a fight with my little brother, just an argument. And I hate arguments. And I didn't like getting on the school bus and leaving my mother and my brother after that argument. And I came to school sad and I was angry. And somebody walked up just as I was sitting down for breakfast and said to me, can I give you a hug? You look like you need a hug. She said it was like that. Every time, every need that I knew I had, and even ones I didn't know I had, were met. The only regret I have about Oakland Community School is that it doesn't exist today for all the children in all the school districts that need it, or something like it. And she said again what we were thinking when the school was open. It should be the way in which we deliver curriculum to all children, and they shouldn't have to pay for it. But you can see the individual child in front of you virtually or in person. And you can assume that their families are doing the best they can, rather than that they're not, that the families don't care, and that the children don't want to learn. Those are fallacies based in age-old bias assumption and racialized thinking. So I just want to leave you with a statement that I leave everybody with when I close any speaking that I do. It came to me. I was prompted by a group of teenagers that said, "So, what do teenagers do? What do Black teenagers do, Miss Erica, if there's so much to change in the world, and we don't know exactly what next step to take? What do we do? What's your advice?" And I told them I don't give advice because I don't have all the answers. But I do know that love is a great expression of power. Use it to transform your world. Thank you.
What a blessing, what a blessing, what a blessing. So before we talk about what our lovely elder Erica Huggins shared with us, I want to just welcome our additional panelists, Director VanCedric Williams. I'm so glad you're able to join us. Go ahead and introduce yourself to us. Unmute yourself too, don't forget.
All right, thank you. Yo, what's up, everybody? My name is VanCedric Williams, 20-year educator in San Francisco, and live in Oakland. Just got all love for Oakland, Planet Roots, for the last 12 years. Just really fortunate. I ran for the Oakland School Board, District 3, and on a teacher platform, social justice, equity platform, anti-racist platform, pro-public school platform, investing in marginalized, vulnerable students platform, and I won. because people's are ready for that. They've been ready for that. And so it's a blessing to be here today. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, woo. I'm just this 10 minutes in this video, and so much was said and so much was relayed. And I was trying to decide which way to go, because there was just, you know, everything we could think of wanting to hear, we heard. So I want to land on the last point that our elder Erica landed on, which is that Black children have this great expression of amazingness. I'm gonna come to you, Whitney, first. You're a classroom teacher, so you're interacting with Black children and many other children all the time. But I want you to kind of talk to us about what kind of sorts of challenges, but also what kind of joy are we, and great expressions of joy are we seeing from Black children? And if you can also talk about their need, you know, hook us up, give us some understanding, ground us in.
All right, let me take a stab at this. So in terms of joy, what comes to mind is recently, you know, it was Black History Month, and we really wanted to celebrate it. You know, we're all on Zoom, it's all virtual. I haven't even really seen my students, like literally their faces, in quite some time in some instances. And so we really wanted to raise the voices, really elevate our Black students in our school. So my colleagues and I, we started along with our BSU, a Black Is campaign. And we worked with students for them to, you know, say, what is Black to them? What do they love about being Black? What is their favorite thing about Black? And we had them share a picture, like their favorite picture of themselves. And then we had an Instagram post for each student for each day of Black History Month, where they really got to showcase what brings them joy, what they love about being Black. And it all culminated, we took those posts and put it into a video, really putting it to music and describing and highlighting everything that they love, that's just like, it ranges anywhere from the Friday movies to collard green juice. Like, I was a student, she's like, I love collard green so much, I drink the juice.
I love it too. Awesome. Mm-hmm.
So it's about like creating those opportunities and creating spaces, thinking now as we are virtually, for students to really celebrate themselves and their community. In terms of their the challenges, our students, our Black students in particular, I feel like even in my own experience, there's a lot of generational trauma. And we do a lot of work in our curriculum of like talking about where this generational trauma comes from, why that it actually exists, that what they're experiencing is not just them, it's not these feelings of like what is going on or what is going on in my family, why are things this way, that it is something that is systematic and planned, and that they do though have agency around it and control. And so it's about really thinking about that and reflecting about that. What do I need to do in my life? What do I need to do to make sure this doesn't continue? And then also providing resources around mental health and girl circles and boy circles and restorative circles and areas. We do a lot of circles, spaces for students to really talk about and process what they're going through.
Right. And I think you bring up a really good point around, you know, where are those spaces across the system, right? And where are those what we call at Bay Area Plan safe moments that folks can have. And I think a lot of Black parents particularly ask that question too. My child needs safe space, right? And so I'm going to come over to you, Erica, because it brings up like, why even start the Black Lives Matter movement, even in schools, right? If we're hearing all this stuff and people are hearing it, teachers are hearing it, why do we need a movement to lift this up even more?
Yeah, I think, thank you. You know, we know the harms that are done unto Black students every single day. There's a lot of talk about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, but it's not talked enough about what causes trauma within the school building. And that comes from educators who, I think number one, educators who don't love their students. We talk about opportunity gaps, but a friend of mine coined this term, but there's a love gap. And I think we have too many teachers who do not love their Black students, who are terrified of their Black students, who want to criminalize their Black students. And so you can say all you want and wear t-shirts that say Black Lives Matter and say you believe in Black Lives Matter, but the second you pick up that phone because you're scared of that Black student standing in front of you, that goes away. And so, you know, as an educator that teaches majority Black students, you know, I see the harms that are done unto my students every single day, and it's heartbreaking. And, you know, that comes in the form of discipline. It also comes in the form of colonized curriculum that's unengaging, that's harmful. You know, it comes in the form of police in schools and watching students be criminalized. And it comes in the form of inequity in terms of resources, in terms of staffing, in terms of anti-racist training for educators and ongoing, you know, and in terms of student voice and value and human dignity in the school building and in the classroom. And so, you know, I talk a lot about my Black students, particularly my Black boys. And by the time they get to me in high school, it seems that their souls have already been, you know, affected by the traumas that they've faced, even through the younger years, moving up and matriculating into high school. And you can see that spark kind of dulled in their eyes, and it's very scary and it's very sad. And we need Black Lives Matter in schools to prevent that from happening, and to make sure that our students are respected and seen as human beings, and valued and loved and cared for and lifted up as well, provided a safe space that values every single part of who they are. My Black students in particular are the most loving of my students, the protectors, kind, humor, joy, fun. Those are my Black students. That's how I see my students. But so many teachers don't see the students in that light. They already have a lens of a racist lens. And so we must focus on Black brilliance and uplifting curriculum that matters and that makes sense and that students can see themselves in the curriculum. And make sure that, you know, Black Lives Matter is not just a saying and it's not just a t-shirt, that it's reality. And what does that mean? And I think that Elder Huggins really beautifully described what that can look like, and what that can feel like. And we have an obligation. It is our duty as educators to provide that environment and that love and that care for our students, which was ripped away as part of Brown versus Board, because the integration really was just an integration. It was a firing of thousands of Black teachers. So it wasn't that Black teachers were being integrated into white schools, or that curriculum was revamped. It was placing Black students in harm's way. And what we see now is just a culmination of that history, unfortunately. And so that is why Black Lives Matter in schools is so important, and that we are doing the real work to see systemic change, and that it's not just a fad or a hashtag or a name on it or a words on a t-shirt, but that it's reality for our students because they deserve it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you know, VanCedric, Director VanCedric and Director Hutchinson, for those that don't know, are the two co-authors that have helped the Black parents and Black students bring forth the Reparations for Black Students resolution. So I'm going to go over to VanCedric first. You know, what prompted you to really, in the spirit of Black Lives Matter, you created a resolution to bring that awareness into the Oakland Unified School District with the Black Lives Matter in Schools Week. And now you're co-authoring this Reparations for Black Students resolution. You know, why does this matter? Why are we doing it now?
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think the time is now because our community is demanding it. I think our community is really want to hold our systems and power in check. We want to dismantle some of the particular practices that have created uneven results. I think the community wants a system of justice, restorative justice, acknowledgement of generational harm, to really say that if you care about us, then you're going to invest in us. And I think that's something about this sense of engagement, this collective voice, collective whole that our people have, this sense of understanding that one, literacy is liberation, but also knowing that it is so important for our community to lift ourselves up. And we are facing historical systems that have kept us down. So now that we're in a place that we've elected board members who have advocated for social equity, justice, community schools, community diversity, it's time for our district to actually speak to that and to actually show that its actions will represent it. I think one of the things that I think about is Assata Shakur's statement that, you know, we have a duty to fight for our freedom. You know, we have a duty to win. Like, we love each other. Our community, there's a lot of Black love out there. It's a lot of love and support for one another. But the thing is, we have nothing to lose, you know, but our change. So now is our time, right? Now is our time to really ask for what is due. And that is actually an investment in our kids. Use this institution the right way. I think that, you know, when you're teaching and you're in schools, you start to look at our students, as Erica said, once they're getting to high school, a lot of young folks are kind of hasn't figured out, you know, why this isn't working for me, right? And so it's our duty to fight for our young folks. It's our duty to advocate. It's our duty to call to question the practices that have been preceding us, that have created this disconnect of a relationship. We actually have to ask everyone to really ask your district to think about indicators that make our students thrive, right? We really have to look at, does the system create a healthy student, an empowered, a loved student, an affirmed student, an academically prepared student, a student that feels like a sense of belonging? And if it doesn't, then you have to go to the board and you have to start advocating. You cannot accept what is being given to you. You have to go to that board and demand change. You have to demand something different that we haven't been getting, which is the treatment and the fairness that we deserve, that we belong, that we should be loved, and that we should be affirmed, that we should be empowered. You know, so I think that, you know, our community has realized that no longer can we just allow others to dictate our future, but we have to engage struggle and break these chains. Thank you.
All right. Well, you can't fight back against the statement around breaking chains. Absolutely nothing that can be said. I think we can all snap on that. So thank you for bringing that into the mix in this conversation, because this is some hard work, hardest on some days, and, you know, hard on others, right? But I want to come over to you, Director Mike Hutchinson. You are also a co-author on the Reparations for Black Student Resolution. You also supported the Black Lives Matter in Schools resolution that was brought. How are they connected? You know, same question, but I want to add a little spin on it. You know, I want to ask you, how does this connect even to the legacy of the Black Panthers here in Oakland? Because I do think that, you know, we're not doing new work, we're building on work. So how do you see this all connected?
So First, for everyone watching, all of the panelists are being very humble when they describe the work that they do. And so for me, this is really exciting. And I think when we step back and look at it, we can see the direct line from the Black Panthers to what we're talking about now with Black Lives Matter in schools and reparations for Black students. I'm now old enough where I grew up in the shadow of the Panthers. And now I'm here to see the next generation really taking the torch and running with it. And so it is exciting. I also think that there's a natural progression to the organizing also. You know, we've gone from Black Power to saying Black Lives Matter to now saying we need reparations to repair and address these systemic issues so we correct it going forward. And, you know, a lot of us have been involved with work where we talk about using an equity lens. That's what really this is trying to codify now. We're trying to say that the way that we've always done business hasn't worked for all of us. That white supremacy and racism is embedded within our system. And the only way to address that is in a systematic, codified way with explicit reparations to repair the damage that continues to be done. You know, this is exciting. This is the work. And I really feel like for us in Oakland, starting with the state takeover in 2003, we haven't really been able to engage in this work. So we have almost 20 years delay for the work that needs to be done. And so I think this is exciting. I think it really builds off of also the work last year for police-free schools led by BOP to get the George Floyd resolution. We had a student-led protest over the summer where 15,000 students self-organized for a Black Lives Matter march. One of the little things about that march that people leave out is at the end of that march, when the curfew that the mayor had set up passed, our police force used tear gas and rubber bullets on those same students just months ago in Oakland, California. So sometimes we forget living in this beautiful bubble in Oakland in the Bay Area. It's not good enough here either. And yes, it might be better than some other places. But my last little pitch is I blame my generation for a lot of things. I don't think we carried on the work like we should have. I was a child of the movement, of the struggle. My parents were involved. My white mother loves to tell the story about how Sister Erica kicked her out of the community school because she didn't need to be volunteering there anymore. My family's been involved with this for a long time. And I think this is our time, our moment. We have people in positions to leverage these decisions. And so it doesn't get lost, and then I'm gonna be quiet because I'm just a replacement. The most beautiful thing that I've seen over this effort of the last 6 weeks, really, of bringing forward Black reparations is to see the community unified in its support. And when I say community, I don't just mean the Black community. And so it has uplifted me to see this. We live in a city that's lost half of its Black population. We live in a city where thousands are living in encampments on the sidewalk, and most of those folks look like us. And it has been really encouraging to see the support for the idea of reparations. And so we've brought it this far. Now it's time to bring it across the finish line and really bring this idea into fact and into reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to lift up that, you know, people can believe that this is just work in Oakland, but we know that not to be the case, right? The whole idea of Black Lives Matter in schools is a national call. There are, you know, hundreds of organizations that are saying, hey, we agree, we need to have this conversation. So I want to come back up to you, Erica, and because you're in Maryland, you're not in Oakland. I mean, I know you're here with us right now. Thank goodness for Zoom and technology. Where would we be if this had happened in the 80s? I don't know if we would have survived, y'all. But not to digress too much. But, you know, Erica, you are in Maryland and you all have been doing some amazing work there in Maryland, in your county. So can you share a little bit about that work? I wanna particularly hear how it's landed landed, how you're pushing. And then I also heard that you've brought some work up to the even National Education Association. And so share with us what that work has looked like. To Mike's point, we have this amazing opportunities to really look at the full system. So want to just give you that opportunity to share a little bit with us.
Sure. So I've been very honored and fortunate to have been a part of the Black Lives Matter at School movement from its inception in terms of its national status. And so, you know, if Brother Jesse was here tonight, he would give the full history of what, you know, how that movement came to be. But it did start off in Seattle, where just in one school in Seattle, teachers wanted to wear Black Lives Matter shirts to uplift their Black students, because in response to too many, you know, murders of unarmed Black men and women. And unfortunately, what happened, it was endorsed and it was going to happen. And then there was a bomb threat made to that elementary school by a white supremacist in the area. And they ended up having to officially cancel the day. But the organizers and the teachers didn't want to cancel. They weren't going to, you know, crumble in the face of fear. And so they went on and continued with the plan. And instead of having one school do the day of action, it ended up being, I believe it was close to 3,000 to 4,000 teachers that wore the shirts in their schools across the district and did a day of action talking about racial justice, anti-racism work, you know, history of I believe the Black Panthers as well. And then it ended up being moved to, I think, a group of educators in Philadelphia in the WE caucus, the Working Educators Caucus, heard about what had happened in Seattle, and they actually did a week of action in Philadelphia in alignment with Black Lives Matter, although they are separate entities. And then it spread to Rochester, New York. And so it started to spread. And then I was fortunate to be at a conference in 2017 in Baltimore, actually, in my area, called Free Minds, Free People. And at the Free Minds, Free People conference, I was at a session with some of my colleagues and heard from the Seattle and Philly educators and what they had done in Rochester. And at that particular session, that was when the vote happened to bring this movement to the national platform. And so I was able to bring the week of action back to Howard County, where I teach in Maryland. And at the time, I was in a group called the Educators of Color Coalition, which was developed by my colleague and friend Matthew Vaughn Smith, who had created a caucus of educators of color. We voted to endorse the week of action in Howard County. We sought the endorsement from our local union. It was a very difficult struggle. In the end, there was an endorsement, but no financial backing, which you know, was really tough at that point. And it was a rough journey, but we did it. And we held a very successful week of action in Howard County, organized by the Educators of Color Coalition. That coalition was later dismantled, and not something that we did to dismantle, but it was dismantled. And we ended up continuing the Black Lives Matter at School since the fall of 2000, or since the February of 2018. Since then, we have organized with multiple community groups, Racial Justice Now, what is now the Anti-Racist Education Alliance, and several other organizations. We actually were able to get the Board of Ed to pass a resolution in support of Black Lives Matter at schools 3 years in a row. This year, we were so excited that our youth actually led the charge. And so now the youth are leading the charge in this. We had an amazing group of young people, Black and Brown group that was formed after the murder of George Floyd, called HOCO for Justice. They led the largest rally and march ever in the history of Howard County. I think also close to about 15,000 people showed up in the midst of COVID, with masks, in cars, not in cars, and demanded justice. And so HOCO for Justice, in collaboration with a couple student groups, have led the charge. They were the ones who moved the resolution this year. It was passed again, and they have taken on the work of the Week of Action and the Year of Purpose. So now the Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action has 4 systemic demands that we are advocating for. So it's not enough to do a Week of Action. It's not enough to even do a Year of Purpose, which is now what we've been implementing, making sure that this is a year-long process, that people understand that it's not just a week that Black Lives Matter, but every day of every year in history. And so in addition to the Year of Purpose that was implemented this year, we have the 4 demands. And those are the systemic changes that we are pushing for. And those are the systemic changes that we want to see for our students that are very much in alignment with the push for reparations for Black students that's happening in Oakland. One of those demands is implementing restorative justice and eliminating zero tolerance policies, mandating Black and ethnic studies, hiring more Black teachers so that we have teachers and educators that look like the students that they serve. And we also have counselors, not cops. So the work I'm doing right now here in Howard County is very much focused on the last demand. We know that there have been movements across the country that have been very successful in removing police from schools. We have not been so successful in Maryland yet. We are working on it. We have some state bills that are chugging along. We have some local bills, and we have local boards of ed that have been pressured now by multiple student groups, tons and tons of student groups, organizations that are now on board with police-free schools. And so that's a little bit about the work that's going on here. We were able to push the Maryland State Education Association to pass a new business item 2 years in a row to endorse the Black Lives Matter School Week of Action with a financial component. So we are giving grants away for $500 to local union associations, our local education associations, to use those funds to do the work that they need to do. Maryland is it has a variety of demographics. We have very, very rural areas that are mainly white. And so we've even seen Black Lives Matter at School work being done in those counties. We're really proud of that. And so that's kind of the story of how it's come along, but we know that it's being implemented all across the country. It was brought to the NEA nationally. Shout out to Sister Cecily and the Black Caucus of NEA for getting that work done. And I can talk a little bit in a minute or whenever you want about, I was able to bring with the support of the Black Caucus, again, I want to shout out Cecily Meyer Cruz, in a reparations legislative amendment to the NEA that did pass, as well as a new business item that supported reparations. So now NEA must support through legislation, lobby for any bill in Congress regarding reparations that they believe is a positive bill. And that means also that they should be supportive of states and locals that are doing the work for reparations as well. So that's a really huge landmark success at the NEA national level that type of legislation was passed.
Yes, and I definitely think that brings so much joy to my ears, and I think everyone on here smiled a little bit inside to kind of know that not only are we talking about a movement of organizations, students, parents, but now that movement is getting organized and putting forth the policies needed, whether that's in our unions, whether that's in our districts, whether that's in our state legislation process, or even at the Congress level. And so there's this amazing opportunity that is before us. No longer do we have to be scared to say we want an anti-racist school system, but we have an opportunity to say we want to see Black students in a way that they have never been seen before. And we're winning, right? And we're winning in a way that we've never won before, right? So, that, I don't know if that gives you goosebumps, but it gives me goosebumps. I feel our ancestors are feeling proud of us. I think they are most definitely seeing us as their wildest dreams come true. And I want to land us on some final words, because for those that don't know, we are all doing this work every day, day in, day out. And I know, like you all, that it's that time. It's that time to start to rest, because rest is a part of reparations too. Rest in our bodies and giving our bodies what we need to be able to do this work over the decades ahead is also part of it. So what I want to close us out with is a couple of things. One, what does the win look like? What does the win look like? And what, if everyone could go around and just say, what will it feel like to see the system change for Black students? What's your highest hope? I'm gonna go ahead and start with VanCedric.
Thank you. What does the win look like? And my highest hope. So, it really, as an educator, I just want to shout out Erica. She just really killed it before. But I just really want to make sure that our students, when they are born, from birth to graduation to career, right? Like, we have done everything in our power to provide them an opportunity to be them best, to be their best selves, to be able to make the best choices possible. And it starts with grounding. It starts with knowing who you are. It starts to know who your history is. It is really about, self-love. That's what I want. That's really what I'm looking at for this particular measure of reparations, is that for the first time in Oakland and throughout other districts, that we really come and use the tools at our disposal. We're going to take this white supremacist tool and turn it around and actually use it for good, not for exclusion, but for inclusion. We really are going to use it to not to discourage, but to build up, to empower, right? We really can no longer just accept what's being given to us. So this is a moment that I would like to see, that we are challenging the system, holding the system accountable, and making the system do right for our young generation of folks. We know that our ancestors have laid their lives down every single day of the year for the last 400 years. And now we just can't stand on the sidelines and try to enjoy any fruits. We have to continue this fight. We have to continue this lifting up of our generation, of holding true to what our ancestors expected of us. And so as you move yourselves, as we move ourselves in position of power, of organizing, of organizing and coming together, we really have to use these opportunities to make this country do right for our kids. And so that's what I really stand for. That's what this resolution is for. I can give you so much on what the history has been. Losing Black educators back in the 50s and 60s to get to be part of this integration was a heavy price that we paid, and so now we are finally recovering from that. And now we have to actually do more. We can never be satisfied what is given to us, what we have here today. And the chains may not actually be around our wrist or our neck, but we have to unchain our minds, right? And so that's what this particular resolution is forcing our district, calling the question, using the powers of our community, using the powers of our ancestors to call the question for this investment into our kids. And I think we are headed in the right direction. We can say it loud and be proud, and we can celebrate our Black girl magic at the same time. We can celebrate our love for life through education and educate our kids for success. So that's what I want, and that's what I hope, and that's what I'm asking all of you out there to come together and stop standing on the sidelines, but just go ahead and get involved and ask for more, do more. There are folks that are willing to do it with you. And we just have to just continue to rise. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to rise, we're going to hold accountability. Sister Whitney, tell me, what do you hope will be the impact on Black students? We want to win this resolution. We're going to take it to the national. We're going to build this amazing movement around Black students. What do you hope it'll bring all about?
At the core of everything I do, but especially as an educator, I have the firm belief that until the most marginalized members of our community are free, none of us will be free. And just based off of, what Director Hutchinson was saying around the statistics around the Black people in our community in Oakland, we are a marginalized community. So to me, the dream realized would be freedom. It would be loved. And our young people will feel taken care of. They will feel seen. They will be honored. And it will be a holistic approach. It won't just be about throwing a program their way, some after school additional thing that they need to do on top of everything else. It's not an aside thing, but it's embedded into their school program. They are getting the support they need. They are being fed. Their families are being supported. They are welcomed in the school. They feel safe in the school and they want to be there. So that to me is what this is all about. And I'm really, really feeling hopeful that it will become a reality soon.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sister Erica, go ahead and close us out with what do you think will happen from the national? And I'm gonna come around to you, Mike. I ain't forgot you. What do you hope for at this national level?
So many things. We've brought the police-free schools discussion to the national level in its first attempt. It was a rough go around. I hope that we are able to change the hearts and minds of people and realize the harms that are being done to our Black students and that that's enough. Too often we talk about equity, or folks talk about equity and are still suppressing and ignoring the voices of those who are most affected by oppression and racism. And that's not true equity. True equity is not when the loudest voices are the ones that are always heard. We always say, even if one student is harmed by a policy, by a practice, by a police officer in a school, that should be enough to dismantle those policies and to change the system. And it hasn't been enough yet. And it needs to be enough until whiteness and white normativity is canceled, for lack of a better term, until the script is flipped, where whiteness is not the norm or the expected. We won't get there, but we're working hard for it to come to fruition. And when I'm going to honor two separate people as I say these things. One is an amazing young person who I work with, McKenna Burns. And we were talking about what freedom looked like the other day, and she described it in such a beautiful way of where she can just walk through the streets and be her full, complete self with no fear, and just be able to live and breathe in the same way that white folks can do with no fear. And that was what she said. And I want to also honor my brother, Matthew Vaughn Smith, who talks a lot about freedom dreaming, and that's his term. And so I talk to my students a lot about freedom dreaming and what that looks like to them. It's not on me to say what freedom looks like for my students. It's for them to decide what it looks like for themselves, and then us as teachers and educators to support them in what their dreams of freedom look like. And so I asked them to talk about what freedom looks like and smells like and tastes like and feels like and all those senses. And so my real dream for the national level is that we create and push for an environment where all of those things that my students dream of in terms of what liberation looks like to them comes to fruition, that they can feel it and they can taste it and they can smell it, and that their vision and their feeling of freedom is what we are able to create for them and sustain for them for the future, and that the ownership of resources and the ownership of life is finally put into the hands of those who have worked, bled, died on this land that was stolen, and have not been given the ownership that is deserved, what is truly reparations.
Woo, how can you even follow that up? I mean, woo. So, brother Mike, I'm gonna go one. I'm gonna go a different direction because Sister Erica said everything and dropped the mic. What is your hope for those who are getting elected, thinking about running for office? I mean, this has got to be one of the most amazing and scariest moment to have power or to be a part of a system with authority. What is your hope for how they will show up as these movements, as we come together and push for this system's change? What is your hope around what folks do?
So I'm excited, but kind of to go back to your first question, I don't know what a victory will look like. I don't think I've ever seen it in my life. And so, but this feels like we're moving in the right direction. And one of the big things with my election that I was hoping, and actually with Sister Carol Fife's election to the city council also, that we would provide a different example to folks. So people understand that somebody like me, somebody like Carol, somebody like us can get elected to office. I think it's really important. I grew up in the shadow of the Panthers. I believe in by any means necessary. And I think it's really important that we engage in every space and on every level. And I'm starting to get excited that maybe this is what a real inside-outside strategy looks like. And so I encourage everyone to engage, to see if this works. Like we can't give up. That's not an option. And look, this is day, I think 67 for Director Williams and myself on the school board. And in day 67, we're talking about bringing Black reparations to the board for a second time. This is what change can look like. It's not easy, it's not comfortable. And I really want to thank everyone on here and make one point that was just kind of left out too, is the five of us on here really represent some different perspectives, working in different spaces. This is community, organizing, parents, unions. And when we learn how to really come together in true coalition and solidarity, this is when we become unstoppable. So I'm excited. There's a long way to go, but I'm hopeful that we can get there now.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I want to appreciate every single one of you. I think you've given us all, both virtually and spiritually and mentally, a lot to think about. The idea of Black Lives Mattering in school is not something that we have to dream about. It's something we're doing right now. We're making it matter. We're centering Black students, we're centering Black parents, we're centering Black educators, we're centering Black power to make change. And as we do this work that we are called to, I think that it is an amazing opportunity, as Director Hutchinson just said, to find those places where we are having different experiences and have different roles and come together and really unify. And so thank you, Director Williams. Thank you, Whitney. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Director Hutchinson, for gracing the stage of the Facebook Live. And with that, I think we have said—
No. And thank you, Pecolia, for moderating in this conversation.
I hope I have done everyone proud. I know this is a privilege for me to moderate. And I will just wrap us up with reminding folks to visit our website, www.reparationsforblackstudents.org. This is again the first day of action to really understand the mindset behind the Reparations for Black Students resolution and why we are pushing as organizers, community members for Black Lives to Matter in schools. Tomorrow, there will be another set of actions, and you can go to the website to get involved, send letters. We are right there, so close to winning this policy. And we invite you all to get in the game. Other than that, peace to you all. And I say this at the end of everything, please take care of yourselves. We have a long fight ahead to undo 400 years of racism. And we can only do that hydrated, rested, and ready to fight. Peace, everyone. Yes, water bottles and all. Thank you all so much. And